All right. Well, do you guys want to get started here? And then we can come back to the meeting minutes and all that other stuff later in the meeting if that works.
Sounds good.
Okay.
In-person meetings, kind of the first thing on the president's report, and I think we have an owl on the way, and Richard can give us the update there.
Yes, the owl was ordered on Friday, and as of today, it's still not been shipped because I ordered it due to Steve's aversion to Amazon. I ordered it directly from the company, and they do have free shipping, they claim, but it's obviously slow free shipping as opposed to Amazon's fast free shipping. So it has been ordered. And presumably it'll get here in the next week or so.
Oh, sounds good. And then we're still looking for meeting space, and I think kind of what seems to be the best space maybe at the moment is possibly the library. So at some point I'm going to go down there and see what's going on. There is still the idea that maybe there's space at Legacy somewhere, but I don't have a contact there. And then somebody said that that old meeting space was kind of small too. I'm not really sure what that is, but if anybody does anybody have any other meeting space ideas in the meeting?
Friendly House was interested. I just have to confirm that we could do it for free.
Okay.
We've used Friendly House before, and it was pretty expensive if they charge us.
Okay.
Does anybody live at the Carson? They have meeting spaces.
Oh, that's right, they do.
Wendy Hawkins does. We could probably ask her if she'd sponsor us.
Okay. Yeah, I think any of those, the
check
top
with,
floor of some of those buildings usually.
I'll check with Fred Meyer also, because prior to COVID, you could use their conference room upstairs.
Yeah, that's nice. And there's parking down below.
Yeah, I'll check on it.
Any space does have to have Wi-Fi that we can connect to.
I actually think Freddie's has Wi-Fi, if you know the right words.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have, hotspot on the phone. I think probably other people do too, which might work, but I guess that might be a little iffy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like we got a pinger in the house. We talked in the executive committee meeting about the SAC suspension and what to do. We did get a letter back from the liaison saying that they consulted with the city attorney, and then they said that they're not doing anything illegal, they say, even though the bylaws say that they have to hold 12 meetings a year, and they're going to be, at the end of the year, 2 meetings short, it looks like. So the question was how to move forward with a complaint, or what should we do? And the best kind of thing we could come up with was to file a complaint with the ombudsman. And right now it's kind of, I think there's 2 points of what should be in it and who should write it. As far as what goes in it, I think my idea was that it should mainly just focus on the idea that they're violating the bylaws, and just go from there. And then a couple other people wanted to more flesh out some other complaints in addition to that. So I think we should have a quick discussion about what should be in the letter. Number one, does the board think that this is the appropriate way to move forward? If so, what should be in the letter and or complaint, and then who should be tasked with writing it? So I guess first up, let's just talk about, does the board feel like this is the best way forward as a course of action? Does anybody wish to recognize or talk? Jozo?
I think we need to make a response. So I think of some type of response, either talking to the ombudsman. Of course, always having things in writing is better with the city. I'd like to make sure we're laying a framework so it just isn't, well, it went away and nobody said anything. I don't know what recourse we have to get them engaged again, though.
I guess, yeah. And I'd love Stephen Moskowitz to weigh in a little bit here, who has some kind of knowledge of, how these things sort of work with the city, I think. And he's been copied on a bunch of the email correspondence. And Stephen, what's kind of your view here? And do you think this the ombudsman approach would be correct or the best path forward?
Well, there's upsides and downsides to it, because once you've asked for some kind of review, investigation, and then response, you're getting a more formal kind of third-party statement about whether or not they're acting improperly or not. So may not want to be stuck with whatever answer they give, especially if it's a negative one. But having said that, I included in some of that exchange a reference to the fact that the city passed, I think it was in 2010, some principles about neighborhood engagement and citizen participation, which has some broad principles, which it seems as if this unilateral decision by the director of a particular department has made to cut back on neighborhood engagement and participation, which is based upon a couple of reasons, as you've indicated, Todd, in the material. One is that, oh, gee, the department says we can't afford to do it anymore. We're having all these cutbacks. But there was also this inclusion about a reference by staff, city staff, that, gee, you're just really hard to work with. And we're not getting the kind of decisions-making process that we need. And so that really cuts to the nature of, well, that's too bad. Sorry that you find us difficult to work with, but that's the nature of the beast of citizen neighborhood engagement, that the city may not always appreciate the kind of responses that they're getting. So the fact that the department head has made a unilateral decision to cut back on citizen participation seems to me to be in conflict with these principles that the city council adopted in 2010. And if a department head wants to, for whatever reason, good or bad, make some kind of cutback that seems to not reflect those principles, they ought to go to city council and say, we're not able to fulfill these principles for these exigent reasons. We don't have the money, or we don't have the staff, and we need to make some adjustments, and get city council to say, yeah, you're right. It's just something we need to cut back on this time, or the level in which you're cutting back still complies with our general principles. So I think there are those issues, as well as just the violation of the bylaws. And in terms of who should come from, I'm not. Who's the actual chair of the SAC at this point?
I mean, that's a good. I mean, there is it's Amy, I guess. Spreadborough is the chair, or I don't think it's called the chair though. It's called something else.
I think it is the chair.
Is it the chair? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's start with Richard.
Oh, I think that one thing that should be in the letter is the fact that while PBOT had complained that the parking SAC was difficult to work with and not willing to go along with everything that they want to do, the fact that you can point to the fact that 28 trees that PBOT was going to destroy were eventually saved because the SAC committee would not agree to fund the project that was going to be doing them, mostly because of the fact that they felt that the trees should be saved. And so I think you can clearly point to the fact that the citizens, that the advisory committee is actually doing good work, and that while it may slow progress, that it's slowing progress in a good way, because it's correcting issues that PBOT is simply mistaken about.
Tanya? No, you're on mute, I think, if you're trying to talk.
Can't they just call the meeting without PBOT coming? Why can't, because wouldn't you have a majority of the board still there? I mean, I'm on the business association. I could encourage, like, Amy, just call the meetings. Just keep having them. I don't understand. You would have a majority of the membership still show up. If PBOT's not been listening to you anyway, it's like, wouldn't it be calling them out for just not showing up?
Yeah, I think that might be a strong point. For whatever reason, I feel like Amy's reluctant to do that, and I'm not really sure what it is. And I was talking to, I think it was Steve, that Amy's sort of become the liaison of the group. I mean, Ray Lee's supposed to be the liaison, but she's kind of firmly implanted on the side of Peabot, and sort of Amy is filling that role of the pivot point between Peabot and the neighborhood. I think she's just worried about upsetting Peabot. Giselle?
Making sure my cat wasn't interrupting. Is there something that we can do in place to stop them without having the citizen advisory? Then the money that we actually help direct can't be used?
I mean, it's just an advisory committee, so they don't have to pay attention to anything that it does in the first place, I guess.
Okay, because
So-
I'd hate to see them keep moving on their merry way after telling the neighborhood to go pound rocks.
Steve?
Oh, thank you. Giselle, as far as I can tell, I mean, Todd's right. I don't think ultimately we have any ability to make them stop doing what they want to do, other than the fact that every budget for the last X number of years, they have set quite a pattern for all of the budgets and all of the funding being specifically approved by the SAC. So regardless of what is the formal relationship, the record and the de facto relationship is what it's been. So I think, you could argue that. I think it's a good question that Stephen raises about referring it to the ombudsman for an opinion. Because of kind of what we were saying, I think, formally the SAC really has very little power, and the breach of the bylaws is fairly narrow, but the Peabot's relationship to the SAC has just plummeted. I mean, in my opinion, and I can't quite figure out what's going on with them, other than they've got budgetary issues and they really don't want to have any impediments whatsoever between them and the SAC and the funding. So the easy way to do that is to just pull the plug on the SAC if they appear to be difficult, and they appear to be difficult, but for, as Richard said, really good reasons. So it's an interesting question. I did throw a message, and it's the first time I've actually responded to the letter that was sent out prior to the October meeting, but I sent an email today simply asking, when can we anticipate the updates that we're to receive on what's been going on in our absence? Because that was part of the letter. And I'll be interested to see how they respond to that, because to me, that's the kind of first toehold as to what's the next thing to do, because it kind of depends on what they've been doing. And we'll see if they reply to that. I was, needless to say, fascinated at the reply to what authority do they have to stop the SAC meetings? And their reply, as Todd said, was, well, it's not illegal. Which good going, guys. It was not illegal, but it was done without even getting the advice of the chair, much less the entire committee itself, which to me is just phenomenal. I mean, if we got issues, let's have a sit down and talk about it. See if we can figure it out, straighten it out, and keep going. But they didn't do that, and they didn't query Amy, but they simply advised her virtually after the fact that this was going to happen, which again, just to me, speaks to the dysfunction, but I'm sure they've got their logic in there somewhere. I think as it stands right now, there's some suggestions to go ahead and hold the January meeting. You know, there was an informal meeting of a number of folks last month. Nothing this Wednesday, but in January to get the SAC more formally back together again, even to the point of picking up some of the business that had been kind of suspended regarding the budget and the IEP. But I agree, without PBOT, and just see where that goes.
I mean, definitely in favor of you know, having a meeting and seeing whether PBOT was to show up or whether or not. It's sort of like more of Amy's call, I would say. And you know, she's not a part of this group. So you know, for the NWDA, is this something we want to sit on until next month, or you know, is this something we want to take action on now and move something forward? Is anybody in favor of some sort of action at the moment?
Well, I would certainly think going to the ombudsman with a letter to the ombudsman would be a reasonable place to go, because that's going to take at least this time of year. It's going to take at least a couple of weeks to resolve anyway. I'll be surprised if anyone in the city offices is going to be around for the next week or so.
Probably more like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks.
2 or 3 or 4 weeks, yes.
Stephen, what's your counterpoint to filing a complaint?
My one concern is that if you don't have support for elevating the issue from members of the SAC itself, that can be kind of counterproductive.
Okay, so maybe the right approach is to.
I think first of all, I don't think this is really boils down to a legal issue. I think it's a political issue. I mean, it has to do with the nature of the power relationships and the degree to which the city is being sincere in its desire to incorporate neighborhood concerns into city decisions. And we've seen a major shift, right, over the last several years in that direction, away from being at all considerate of neighborhood concerns. So if you've got if the news story is members, the NWDA has raised this issue, has asked the ombudsman to put into it. If I'm a reporter, I'm going to immediately start interviewing members of SAC. And if you've got members of SAC saying, you know, we wouldn't have done that, and you know, we're waiting for the city, that creates a real problem. So I think the first step is to really solidify some kind of consensus within SAC itself, rather than the NWDA.
I think that's a great point. You know, I think actually, in a weird way, you know, we can probably get a majority of the board of the SAC just from our group alone, because we have a lot of members that are also doing double duty. Joselle?
So one of us, and I'm happy to do this with somebody else, I think the PBOT is going to bring out that frankly Jean was upset at the last meeting and cried, and they're going to use that as there was a bullying technique going on. And I frankly think the bullying was PBOT setting Jean up for that, being the one who spoke for that totally, because she actually does believe that they're trustworthy, brave, and kind. So I think we need to talk to Jean specifically to get the discussion started, because we need her support overall, so it's not an us-them issue.
And you know, the reason I was in that meeting and she did get emotional, but it wasn't anybody. It wasn't because anybody was attacking her. It was that an objection to putting forward, you know, moving forward with the plan, and PBOT put it in a way that it was if it didn't get voted approved at that particular exact time, then it was never going to be approved. I think that was inappropriate. Right.
I think so, but I think that a lot of the onus went on Jean that she picked up herself, not that was given, but that she picked up. So I think that needs to be checked with, because like I said, I think that they fed Jane a bill of goods, and I'm a little bit concerned that we need to work with her. And she was very supportive. We've met with her once before. I think continuing to meet with her solves that issue and doesn't allow that to be broke up again.
Okay, so the mood, I think, is to work on getting the SAC together for I guess a semi-official, if not totally official meeting, I guess in January, and have them move forward with a letter or complaint or something like that. Is that where we want to leave this? Okay. Any last comments or points before we move on to the next item?
Todd, it's just that there was a very thumbnail draft of what might go to the ombudsman put together that was circulated, between you and Jeremy and a couple of other people. I think it would be good to circulate that a little bit further and try to flesh that out a little bit. But I just agree with Stephen that you need buy-in and need to have pretty clear identification of what the case is. And again, formally, it's quite narrow, but you step back from it a bit, it's pretty broad. So I think some agreement as to how narrow or broad it wants to be really is something that needs to get worked out.
Okay. Cool. Thanks everybody for some good input there. Moving forward to the Slabtown Park update, which is really no update. I was a part of the Parks meeting earlier this month, and we're trying to figure out what our next move is there. The master plan expires at the end of the year, and so with it, the obligation to put a park there. And as part of that meeting, the only thing I could come up with was to send an email out to the membership, kind of outlining what's going on and saying, these are some possible people to contact. That's something that I've been sort of thinking about, but haven't put any action into, and kind of like to see what the board thinks of how to respond to the Slabtown Park issue. Jozo.
I was looking to secure a slot on city council open on January, but they bumped me up to December. So maybe we can meet for coffee beforehand, and Tanya as well, to work on what type of 5-minute presentation I should have to city council. So
yeah, that sounds great.
I'm thinking the fact that we've not had a new park since the 50s. We've had over, and I need to get these actuals. Steve, you may have these, but we've got over a 60% growth in the population here. Seems a little bit glaring in terms of not using any of those funds. Notice, Noel, I'm bringing up the funds, that we're not using those in terms of supporting the Northwest. That was kind of my thumbnail.
What, do you have a date for that? Is that this week?
Yeah, it's Wednesday.
Okay.
So
Regina?
I'm at Starbucks.
I think also sometimes it seems like the city and others kind of say, well, Northwest, you have Forest Park, and that's the biggest park, but it's such a different type of usage as compared to the type of parks we need. And I think they need to hear that we need the kind of parks where people can take their kids and play, and dogs, and, not just walk out in nature. I mean, I love Forest Park, but it's not for everyone. It's not even accessible for everyone. So
Correct.
Steve?
I will continue to ping Brett Horner all along for several years now. A deal has been imminent. It's just around the corner. We're talking. We're making progress. And I could show you, an email string that virtually says the same thing for 24 months now. But nonetheless, it sounded like they actually were making some progress. But I think, I'll just continue to track it and try to do it without being too assertive. But secondly, and I think the thing we're going to be dealing with, a new alluded to this, Joselle, is the perception of Northwest Portland and its park and recreation needs. Because Regina, you alluded to this of their, it's got Forest Park, which is really great for those strollers, as we all know, and roller skating and stuff. But beyond that, there's a perception that Northwest Portland is not underserved. And if you're not underserved, forget it. Or not defined as an underserved community, forget about it. I think our West Side BPS lies.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, that's certainly something that's been raised. But the point, I think that the bigger point of the whole thing is that this park was an integral part of the master plan, and the neighborhood agreed to all this heavy development.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And we were supposed to get a park out of it, and it all appears that the city muffed the whole thing. And in my view, it's since the city screwed it up, it's on them to fix it. Right.
And I would just say, what I was going to say, Todd, was essentially an extension of that. That is, yes, this park came about because of a specific understanding of increased density in the neighborhood. I think we need to push back on the underserved perception with the idea that this neighborhood has probably supported more new housing units than any other neighborhood in the city of Portland. And it is absolutely underserved in terms of the institutional infrastructure that needs to go along with that increase in density and population. And to have underserved have a narrower definition that the city seems to prefer using, I think is something that really needs to be challenged.
Mike Viera had his hand up.
You and I talked a little bit last week, Todd, about the article in the Oregonian that showed that parks had been collecting this money from the ballot initiative that was agreed to a couple of years ago, and they haven't spent it. They've got money sitting there and they haven't figured out what to do with it. What's the problem with it? And I like the idea that you have of sending a letter out to the membership, but putting some of that in there and saying, why can't the city simply purchase? There's no cost to it. It's a zero purchase, but at least say they're willing to commit some money out of that bond money to at least take care of the cement infrastructure that's below the land. At least then the city owns the property, even if they're not in a position to immediately build a park there. That the hurdle we've got to get over is city ownership, and that's critical.
And from my understanding of it is they won't take possession of it until it's remediated. And Stephen Moskowitz, do you have a point of view on that? Is that something that's normal, or is this, as bizarre as it seems to be on its face?
Well, the issue, what's abnormal is that the issue and responsibility for remediation doesn't seem like it was settled, at least from the reports that we're getting, at a time when it should have been settled, which was a long time ago. And right. The fact that it's waiting until this 11th hour and to have this back and forth about, well, who's ultimately responsible for remediating it is incredible. That's what's absurd and unreal.
Yep.
And the city's getting this property for no cost in terms of the actual square footage that's out there. It's just the remediation. Why can't they even simply sign a document that says, well, we're not going to do it right away, but at least we agree that the city is going to remediate, and therefore we can take possession of the property. Anything that gets into the city coffers or in the city agreement, I think is necessary, and that's maybe about all we can hope for.
So Joselle, is there anything that you would like from the group other than sort of support for?
I'm just putting that in the chat to everyone. So I'm going to put my contact in there. If there's things that you would like me to include, that's tomorrow. You need to send them to me by. And then I'd like to get a few of the population change numbers so I can speak with facts on that. Because the other thing is the community center in Hillside went out. So if we look at the broader thing, we continue to get things downsized with no increase. And I kind of like the fact that there's been no increase in parks since the 50s. I think that's a telling comment with everything that's going on. So.
Tanya?
Well, and we also lost the swimming pool and the Schools Uniting Neighborhood program. You know, within, you know, like that was hundreds of thousands of dollars on staffing that came in. You know, I think that harkened back to the fact that we've lost so much and we're not asking for a lot.
All right, I think this is a good idea. Giselle, anything else needed at the moment?
Do we want to add any bell ringer for the Montgomery Park developments? Because here is a fact of time where we can put input into those now, or it's going to happen the same way. Is that something that should be brought up? Or is that something that I shouldn't bring up to the table? And my goal is to write these down and then speak quickly and provide them the hard copy.
In the testimony I provided earlier this year, I mentioned kind of the ESCO site as, you know, if what you promised isn't going to be happening in Slabtown, or isn't happening, I guess, how do we trust anything that you say moving forward?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else want to throw a point up before we move on? And do we want to, other than kind of supporting this testimony this week, is there anything else the board wants to do between now and the end of the year? Okay. We'll move forward real quick with the NWNW Coalition Report. There was not a board meeting this month, but a meeting of what possibly will be the neighborhoods that will make up the new coalition. The city is going to put the neighborhood coalition offices they're going to structure it to kind of overlay the new district. So we had representatives from neighborhoods all over what will become District 4 at a meeting earlier this month. And the purpose of that meeting was to kind of discuss what the coalition should provide. What is NWNW now looks like it will become the coalition office moving forward, but there is no guarantee. They actually have to submit a request to the city to take on the task, and there's a slight possibility that that won't happen, but they're doing kind of everything to make sure that it will. So the way I'm going to talk about it moving forward is just that is what's going to be happening. So the discussion was kind of like, what services should the coalition provide to the neighborhoods? We're pretty self-sufficient. So, you know, other than a couple things that they do for us, there wasn't really much there worth discussing here. I think the thing that I'm concerned about is what will become the new board structure for the coalition. And, you know, right now, you know, there's one board position for each neighborhood. And there's about, I think, 9 neighborhoods in the coalition currently. And then the total amount of neighborhoods is going to go up to like between 30 and 40. So the question is, are we going to have a board seat for each of the neighborhoods, or is it going to kind of rotate around or something like that? Like, what is that going to become? And the view I had in the meeting was that it was a very productive meeting and a good meeting. And there was a lot of people in the room, and sort of, I feel that it should continue to be one neighborhood, one vote, or one seat for the structure. But there is also talk about, should we include business associations and other different organizations? And I think that's when things kind of start going off the rails. I think that it's a neighborhood coalition office. I think, you know, and there's a move to say that we should have other seats for other interests. And I think that's when it becomes something else other than a neighborhood coalition. So that's something I'm personally concerned about. But that's not anything that is currently up for being discussed, but it's something that's definitely on my radar. So that is my report there. Steve?
This neighborhood has been explicit in its opposition to other organizations being represented on the board. It's a neighborhood organization. We don't need lobbyists at the table. Second, it's just the question to you, Todd. There will be an open RFP that goes out, I believe, next month for the district offices in these 4 new districts. And I think you're right. I mean, I think NWNW, the existing NWNW, is making moves to be the successful respondent. But I also anticipate that there will be other respondents. And I guess not knowing anything else, I can imagine some organization coming in from left field, kind of wanting to take this on and being successful, and the city being okay with that, in their current state. So I don't know. I mean, it's just a question to you as to what your sense of that possibility is from the meeting that you attended, and what your own personal view is.
Yeah, I mean, definitely anything is possible. What will be, whatever this coalition forms, whatever it becomes, is not quite baked yet, but it kind of feels that this is what's going to happen. So I don't see anything else developing at the moment. If that happens, then of course I'll let everybody know. But nothing's on my radar at the moment. And I think the only other organization that has sort of like a realistic crack on it was what was called Sweeney, I guess, which is like Southwest Neighborhood Association, which has been defunct for some time. They had some odd troubles down there. But a lot of the Sweeney former members were at this meeting earlier this month. Everybody seemed pretty happy with what was going on. So I feel like that's less of a possibility. It's something that, keep our eyes on. And I think the only other thing that I kind of noticed in the meeting was that some of these neighborhood associations are very small and not very independent, which is sort of very different from our organization, which was sort of founded on its independence. And that's something also to keep in mind as, as what it looks like. And I think, it's important for us to maintain that independence and not get swallowed up into, some kind of crazy thing that compromises our unique and original voice. Any questions about the coalition NWNW stuff? Comments? All right. Next up is the charter reform transition.
Just one thing. Are we seeing them actively forward our mail to a new address? Because I know Rich, you and I, and we're working with Larry on getting the right address for the right donation type thing, but is anything else coming through? I just was concerned about that after they brought that up.
Say that one more time. I'm not sure. I didn't quite get the question.
So we used to send everything to NWNW and then pick up our mail there. And my question is, with the change in the office, the change in the address, the change in everything, I know on one of the recent requests to donate to the group, we actually put it in care of NWDA and care of Richard's address so that he could manage it as the treasurer. But are there other things coming in that are forwarded, or do we know?
It's a good question. I think it also brings up a bigger point that in our bylaws, our address is supposed to be within the boundaries of the district, which the coalition office now is not. So to the extent that we're using that address, it's sort of not in line with the bylaws at the moment. I guess anything that they get, generally they figure out who it goes to. We've gotten a couple checks that we've gotten to Richard, so it's sort of working, I guess, but it's a little screwy. Did I answer that question? I don't feel like I did, but what's that? You're on the mute. Okay. Any other questions about coalition offices, NWNW? Moving to the City of Portland transition. I don't think Juliet's here. Does anybody have anything they want to say about the transition effort?
Michael, do you want to talk about the district candidates?
Yeah, that'll come up under my report, which is actually the next item, so I could go ahead and talk about that. It's part of my my work plan for this year. Is that okay, Todd?
Yeah, let's go into that.
As of last Friday, there were 37 individuals who had registered for the council elections in the 4 districts. 8 people are registered in District 1, 12 people are registered in District 2, 10 people in District 3, and we have the smallest representation. We have 7 people vying for the 4 seats. Now, this is very, very early in the process, because if you want to be a candidate, you can wait until April 25th or 26th to register as a candidate. That's when the opportunity to become somebody on the ballot closes. So it's a real problem in the sense that if you think about August 27th, that leaves us with less than 2 months between the closing of the nominations and the actual election. So anyway, Steve, could you put up the page that I sent to you that shows the 7 candidates?
I don't think I can, but Todd probably could.
The one I sent to you, Steve.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I can't, but I think it was sent to Todd as well, so I'm hoping he can. It was in an email this morning, Todd.
I think he's working on it. Okay, there we are. So we have 7 candidates. The first one is Eli Arnold, and you can see that he has got 18 years of experience as a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. He's now been with Portland Police Department for 6 years, and he's on the bike patrol downtown. The next candidate, Olivia Clark, founded a group called CASA, for a nonprofit for farm worker housing, legislative director to 3 Salem mayors, legislative director to Kitzhaber, and former board chair of Providence Health Systems. And I will say that Olivia Clark seems to be the most involved in this process. She has, according to the financial records, she's got a ballot of a balance of $25,000 in her campaign fund that she has filed with the city of Portland. The third candidate down, Michael DiPoli, and there's very little information on him. Chad Likens, Southwest Hayhurst neighborhood, that's across the river, I believe, isn't it? And Rose City chess president. He's kind of an independent guy, but he's got a campaign war chest of about $15,500 now. So he's got some money involved in the process. Tony Morse, Woodstock neighborhood. He's a realtor, but he's also been a field organizer for the Democratic Party. He's got about $13,250 in his campaign. And then we start to drop to the candidates that are less involved. Moses Ross, you can see, and Todd, you probably know Moses. Would that be correct? Looks like he probably sits on the NWNW, I'm not sure, but anyway, he was also on the County Charter Review Board, and about a campaign war chest of about let's see. I'm sorry, Moses Ross, campaign war chest about $2,700. DeNapoli campaign chest or war chest of about $2,800, and then finally Sarah Silkey, and she is an employee of the city, public or Portland Water Bureau for 10 years, a Portland native, and that's about all she says in terms of her ballot qualifications so far. They still haven't filed their official ballot statements, but I've been talking to the League of Women Voters and trying to figure out how we can get involved. The League is planning to have something called a video voters guide, which will take place as a candidate interview for anybody who's a candidate. They can get involved in this League of Women Voters video voters guide. And where we might come in on this issue is that, in fact, they said, we would welcome the NWDA's submission to the League of Women Voters of questions which could be asked of all candidates running for the same office in the primary election. So in other words, the issues that we're concerned with can be brought into this process. The other way that we might involve ourselves is by perhaps partnering with League of Women Voters to do some in-person presentations by the candidates. And as I mentioned to Todd, I think this is really more an issue that NWNW ought to be thinking about, because it's area wide for the west side and also some of the east side. So rather than us trying to do it all, could NWNW kind of take this on? As Vadim et al. Mentioned this kind of thing, Todd?
Yeah, that's something they're definitely working on, and that they're going to have at some point moving forward.
Okay. Well, I don't think we want to wait too long, even though the filing doesn't stop or doesn't end until August 27th. League of Women Voters is already starting to put things together, and I can pass my contacts on to you or directly to Vadim, and I'm willing to stay involved in the process and try to help as much as I can. But I really think it's a broad perspective of NWNW that probably would get the most clout with the League of Women Voters.
Definitely agreed. And I just as a general comment, it's odd to me that it seems like a list of people that I don't know, and do we think that this is going to be a more expansive list of people that are more well known moving forward, or what's
the most recent registrant was in District 3, and that's the fella Steve, and I can't remember his last name, who was on the city council.
Novak.
And so he's the only name out of the 38. He's the only name that I recognize.
Seems very strange to me. Is that strike anybody else as being very odd, or is this what we're going to be? Is this how it's going to look moving forward, or is it just seems like an oddball list? I'll just make that comment. Tanya.
Okay.
My question was slightly different, only because I'm obviously watching election in a different quadrant. How much was these war chests that you described self-paid?
You can't tell. All they do is file the amount of money that's in their war chest with the city, and those numbers were as of last Friday, December 15th.
Well, I'm willing to look, because I've looked in the district my son's running in, to find out how many is the original seed money coming from their own pockets, because I think it makes a difference. But
it probably does, but on the other hand, it's all money, and that's all the city cares about. How much money have you got to spend?
Well, no, because they don't match the seed money on the. So the reason a lot of people haven't put in to run yet is that if it looks like even though they're trying to get the money, the matching funds, which used to be for every $5 someone donated, as long as you had 250 individuals within the city of Portland donate to your campaign, you would get $50 for every 5. And it looks like there's going to be huge cut in funds because of the number of people running. Once again, why are so many people running? Because of this largesse with the campaign contributions that was potential, and you might see people dropping out now that there's huge cutbacks in that budget.
I don't have any information on that, but I can ask League of Women Voters if they know anything, if that's still happening, or maybe contact somebody directly in the city and see what's going on.
I could also just send you the emails I'm getting because I'm helping run a campaign.
Okay, send them to me. Sure.
It's public information that gets sent to the campaigners. My son's running, if you didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanya. Which district? District 1?
Out of St. John's.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Todd, I'd just say yes and no. Yes, it's going to be weird. And no, there'll probably be a lot more candidates by the time we're done with it. And that will contribute to the weirdness. Some of them will. I'm confident that there will be some people we've heard of before by the time.
Well, and it's going to be confusing with this new balloting process where you rank order your chosen candidates, and I think that's going to be so confusing that the League of Women Voters is already talking about doing a number of participation things around the city, trying to explain this whole process to the voters. But I don't think they're going to get much input from a lot of people in terms of questions. So it will be a very interesting and probably a very disorganized election.
The rank voting is so bad, it's the transferable the ballots that I think is going to be a train wreck.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move to parks, Tanya. You just got you're back on mute there.
Sorry. I was looking up, there's a ballot measure right now to do ranked choice voting statewide. So obviously some people seem to love it. Parks. We've had some amazing donations. I'm super excited about that. And we're going to be sending out donation letters before the end of the year. And we've got our thank you letters going. And we've got a lot of dates pending. And then we do know for sure that park under the I-405 is up for finding new leadership volunteers before it gets completely dissolved. And so I talked to Alan from the newspaper, from the Northwest Examiner, and I gave him all my contacts and my information on the hopes that he'll write an article, because there's no one in our committee that is willing to take on that challenge of that park. But as I'm asking ODOT to have more activation under the freeway, we need to save the one little piece that is currently shepherded by the community.
And yet, is that actually a park, or is it better characterized as a plot where you can plant things?
It could be.
It's definitely like an officially sanctioned ODOT area, which I think is important.
I think I'd call it a pocket park if you ask me to put on my urban planning hat. So like in Columbia Villa, there's the big parks with playgrounds and activities. Cooch and Wallace would be that. I think when you have just a small area that could have a picnic table and a small amount of community gathering place, not just planting. I think it could be activated a little bit more. So I would call it a pocket park.
All right. Anything else on parks?
Well, we just have a lot of, fundraising to get together to make it so we can have all our great, amazing events. And I'm excited because people are excited. And then I guess I should mention that Abigail came to our last meeting and presented about her experiences. Giselle, what was it? The I-405 committee, sort of, where I thought it was a really good presentation. And I don't think I thought it should have come to the full board. Maybe she didn't understand, because it wasn't really, it's not really a parks, but she's presented. You have minutes, so I'll make sure to send the minutes to everyone. She basically did her representative report at our parks meeting.
And Abigail Webb is one of our members who's on the board of the I-405 grant, along with Richard, to distribute some money there.
So I'd be willing to
Um,
send our minutes if anyone wants, because it would have been I thought, an appropriate report for this committee more than.
And I'll mention Friends of Cooch Park is now a legal organization, and they had their first event at the park about a couple days ago, and there was some Christmas caroling, and it was very successful. The news was there. I'm not sure if that news report got on KGW or not, but there were some cameras there, and there was about 30 people singing some Christmas carols and drinking some cider from the International Hostel. And it was a really, really great event, short and sweet and nice. And so hopefully we'll see more of that moving forward. But that was a great event. Let's move to.
I'll reach out to partner with them for the concert there as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's awesome. Let's get into some planning.
Hey, good morning. It's it's good to see you all. Did everybody get a copy of our document from Steve before your meeting today?
Yes.
Okay. A little bit of change to it maybe, since I'm not sure which one Steve sent out, but I will just focus on our top 4 priorities, which are on your first page there. And heck of a lot of overlap with what we've just been talking about, and a heck of a lot of focus on recreation and community togetherness in our priorities. So 1, 2, 3 are all about parks, recreation, open space, dogs, and oddly they're sort of highways. So Slabtown Square and Park, you already talked about that to a certain extent. We'll continue to focus on that, on the land transfer, and getting the design process going. Once we start, I imagine once we start to get word from the Parks Bureau that there's some movement there. Second item is Park and Northwest Community Center. So this might be a little bit different from what you have in front of you, because I didn't get transmitted to Steve the version that was edited after last week's PC meeting. But this reads, explore the possibilities of the realization of a sizable park, ball fields, swimming pool, and a community center as identified in the Northwest District Plan in the Esco Montgomery Park area. So kind of builds from what we've been talking about with the City Planning Bureau, concerns we've raised with them about exactly what will happen in the Esco Montgomery Park area. And I think Joselle mentioned some of this a bit earlier about whether to bring this up at City Council when she does the 2-minute testimony or open mic testimony. I think it'd be good, Joselle, to wait on this. So just my 2 cents there. There's a lot to be done here. There's a lot to do in the Montgomery Park area planning process. We are hearing rumors that the plug might get pulled on the whole thing. We've heard that from secondhand comments from a comment made by a city commissioner. We haven't heard that from staff. I think I'd also, well, I'll finish with the park stuff and the open space stuff.
That's referring to streetcar, correct?
Yeah. And then in conjunction with the Parks Committee, revive the prospect of utilizing the areas below the highway viaducts for needed dog park facilities. And I think I sent something out to my committee after this about, I don't know, have all of you been in places where there's recreational activities occurring under freeways? Every town I go to, there is that. And it's just astounding to me that ODOT has expressed what they've expressed. Planning Bureau is suggesting that we get together with parks and do a site visit again. So Tanya, we want to make sure you're involved with that. And I'm not sure, I think we talked about it maybe in January or February. So that's going to happen soon. And I also mentioned, I think, to the committee, yeah, no one else here was really involved in that, but we planted the triangle at the end of 405 and 23rd, this neighborhood, in conjunction with Nina. Hired a landscape architect who donated their services. did a really beautiful planting job that was done, that we paid for actually with funds, and then had to water it for 3 years and have ODOT maintain it. And then ODOT ultimately said, we're not going to maintain this anymore. So most of it got torn out. So they're not a great partner, but they can be a partner. It took a lot of negotiating to get them to buy into us doing this. And so what you see there with the sign and the trees that are in that triangle, we worked on and pursued. So we have partnered with them in the past and had success. So I continue to be optimistic about what could happen under the 405 and Highway 30 viaducts. So those are kind of the top three. The fourth top one is the Northwest District Plan update. And in our conversation with planning staff, it has been rather lukewarm in terms of them buying into moving this forward. And Mary, who's been coming to our meetings, new staffer, amazing that she's coming to our meetings because we've never had somebody consistently show up. She's the one who's been really forthright and just said, you know, we don't think we have the staff, we don't think we have the budget, and what makes you think that you should do this, or that we should support you doing this? And I mean, what I noted was that the ESCO Montgomery Park streetcar work is going on. That's a big deal. There could be changes coming in the south east part of the neighborhood with the religious institutions there and the amount of land they have to develop. And then we are continuing to hear rumors about Legacy Good Samaritan selling or doing something different with their kind of headquarters and research buildings blocks. I can't describe what blocks those are, but we're also hearing funny things about the long-term viability of Legacy Good Sam Hospital. So any one of those things or a combination of those things should be significant enough to be wanting to look at the district plan. And yeah, we're at 20 years now, and lots of things are happening kind of around it and happen to it. So those are our priorities for the year. There's a long list of other things that we're tracking and working on. And any questions on those four? Comments?
Michael?
Early in the fall, there was a Oregonian report that Montgomery Park was going to be auctioned off in the spring. Is that actually going to be happening?
I don't know, but what we've talked about is that you know, they have the zoning in place to do what they want to do. So unlike ESCO, which does not, whoever buys Montgomery Park would have the capacity and the zoning rights, the entitlements to develop at the density that is currently allowed. So that's a little bit different, but I think actually a good point you might be thinking of is, you know, supposedly some of those improvements are linked to traffic and transportation impacts. And so that's where the streetcar comes into play. And if the streetcar gets canceled, there may be an impact to their development.
Okay.
But otherwise, I do not know whether their auction on the courthouse steps is going to happen or not.
And then I'll just make the point that I got an email this morning about an article in Willamette Week. There is a new behavioral health organization that wants to occupy a building kind of near the Children's Montessori School, I would say, underneath the viaducts. And that's all I have there, but that's something that's, you know, going to be on our radar moving forward.
Todd, if I think I can share my screen. I've got that up. Here's the former Premier Gearworks building is right here. And can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
So the former Premier Gearworks building is here. Oh, this is where Olympic provisions used to be, Smith Tees. And then here's Child Peace Montessori School, and they actually occupy more than just this block. They're over here as well. So that's 200 feet from a school. I don't know what the regulations are about siting these kind of facilities, but this is a pretty fancy looking rehab that Sturgeon Development did. And they haven't been able to find any tenants. So yeah, check out that Willamette Week article. And I think we'll be reaching out, just emailing Steve and Todd, we'll be reaching out to Vanessa at Sturgeon and getting Child Peace involved in the conversation. Since I got this open, I'll just quickly float down. So here's the Legacy Employment Services. 3/4 of a huge block undeveloped, in this building is a tear down, no problem in terms of its future. And then this is their headquarters block, which is a more significant structure with some other structures on the block like the Eltonian, but there's a lot of open parking, like half a block, 2/3 of a block of open parking. So we could see some redevelopment there. And that's what we're hearing about. That's what we're hearing about when we're talking about changes to Legacy Good Sam. And again, in case folks aren't sure of why that's happening, I think they're working on a combination of, or in essence, a buyout with OHSU. And that would affect their administrative office needs. Anyone else? All right, thanks for the opportunity to share the work plan.
Yeah, do we need to formally approve it? Does there need to be a motion?
So move.
I'll second.
Objections? Work plan is
Seconded.
passed.
I'm sorry. Regina, did you second?
No, I did. Tanya March.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. That was a great report. Thank you so much for coming. Let's move to safety. And Stephen, do you have anything for us?
Well, the first thing to say is that our chair of the committee, Susan, is dealing with some health issues for a while, and so she's withdrawing from her active participation. Co-chair Rob is going to be handling things at the committee level, so we all wish Susan well. I wasn't able to attend the last session. I'm going to invite Regina, if you were there, if you want to say anything. I'll just overall say that the last couple of months, the committee is focused on, I guess, 3 areas. One, it has to do with emergency preparedness, which is something that the committee hasn't been addressing much in the last year or so. It's also continuing its support of these monthly coffee with a cop sessions that are occurring with the leadership from Central Precinct. And then we've also been monitoring and learning more about all the behavioral health issues, and including the one that the new development or proposed development that Greg just reviewed for us regarding a crisis assessment and treatment center around 17th and Thurman and Xavier. Regina, do you have something you want to add?
I actually missed the meeting last week.
Okay.
So I actually never got a notice of the meeting last week, and I didn't put it on my, put the onus on myself to make sure that I got it. So
no, so I'll be in touch with Rob and make sure he takes up from Susan, and maybe invite him to also attend the board meeting to make a report.
Sounds good. Anything else? Let's move. I guess next on the agenda is executive committee report, and I don't really have a report here other than to say trying to get more organized. I feel like the last month or so, I just kind of got bogged down in a lot of emails and this and that, and so I'm trying to work, personally trying to work to get more efficient and get better organized, and I think that in so doing, I'm also going to try to work to get us a little more organized and do some more outreach and try to get more participation among the broader membership and figure out better ways to kind of communicate with the membership. And other than that, I think it's a priority to have a possibility of meeting in person again. I'm looking forward to trying to have that first opportunity coming up in January when we get the OWL technology going, and hopefully that will make a big difference. And other than that, that's pretty much all I have. Is there anything from the broader group about what we would like to see as goals and priorities for 2024? All right, well, if anybody thinks of anything, of course, just reach out.
I do. Hey, just put us on the spot. Call us out. Call us out.
Yeah, well, we're getting a little late in the meeting here, but if anybody has is there something that anybody feels that we should be doing more of or less of as we move into 2024? And Steve has his hand up. Steve.
I'd just like to see us have better relationships with the city agencies, particularly PBOT. And I've been beating on the drum for years now about all the issues and I have with PBOT, the way they behave and the way they treat the neighborhoods and all of that sort of stuff. But that's all fine and dandy. But how do we fix it? So I guess I would be the first one to, or not the first one, but I would certainly, if I were to choose one thing from a neighborhood perspective this year, it's to, better relationships with the city in terms of being able to just help this poor city out. It needs us.
And to me, I just feel like meeting in person just accomplishes that so much more. When I feel like these electronic meetings get sort of confrontational, just because there's just something that you lose when you're not facing somebody or in the room with somebody, and that just there's more contentious atmosphere that develops for whatever reason. I don't really understand it, but I'm looking forward to creating more opportunities to get us in the same room as we move forward. And we should probably look to do that with the city as well. Anybody else?
Rich, what would your one wish be?
Well, take you off mute first.
My cursor. What would I think what we need to do in the coming year is make sure that we are well situated regarding the new city structure, regarding the new consortium that's going to be organized for the community organizations. I think we need to make sure that we play as big a role in that as we possibly can, because there is going to be some delusion with the expansion of, if indeed it works out, there's an expansion of NWNW to now, instead of representing 10 neighborhood organizations, to represent 20 or 25 neighborhood organizations, then there's a likelihood that any individual voice will be diluted in that. And if there's any way that we can try to maintain a stronger voice, I think it's important to do so.
Let's just go around the horn real quick before we kind of wrap things up. Tanya, have anything to offer?
Well, definitely in-person stuff. I'm 100% for it. I'm thinking, we need to do not only just meetings in person, but maybe social, something together in person.
And I feel like that's something somebody brings up every meeting, and then then there's another meeting.
Yeah.
Michael.
I'm remembering under President Hyams, under Madam President Juliet, when she, each December, we would convene at the Lompoc for a good happy hour / board meeting. So and that helped.
I like that. Michael Viera. What do you
Richard really covered the same kinds of things that I would have said. It's going to be a very interesting year, and we've got to make connections with this new council. They will start in November, and they will be representing us. So we need to stay ahead of them.
Yeah, and probably establishing those relationships before they get into office is probably important too, because once you're in office, things change. Joselle Johnson.
Couple things. Do we need to actually look to see if we could encourage people within our group, not group specifically, but within our neighborhood that might be appropriate to have them take a city council position? And the PBOT bothers me. They seem to be a little bit out of control. So I think we need to address that.
Even Moskowitz.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit less sanguine about the future of relationships between neighborhood groups and city bureaucracy. I think we're going to see an ongoing degrading of that relationship. I think city bureaucracy is going to become even less solicitous of neighborhood opinions than it has been. So what I would advocate for is increasing the way in which, as a neighborhood association, we bring something to the neighborhood in terms of more in the way of self-help and self-improvement. So maybe some kind of expo or something like that we host of groups that are doing something to improve the quality of life in our community, whether it has to do with graffiti cleanup, street cleanup, business development and support, beautifying the parks, any kind of volunteer groups that are doing something to address the quality of life that in effect bypasses or pushes the role of the city, the power of the city in doing those things. I think it's going to increasingly become an area in which it's going to be up to us as citizens to make this city better. And so I'd like to see the neighborhood association kind of highlight that in terms of bringing all those groups together, some kind of a fair of citizen community self-improvement fair or something like that. So
that sounds great. Regina?
Well, I agree with in-person meetings and thinking that is more, I don't know, I think it builds more trust and perhaps more action. I've been on this thing now for like not quite 2 years, but I feel like every meeting we, complain that the city is doing this wrong and not paying enough attention to us. And, and we write them letters or we complain and it doesn't change. So I feel kind of like, I feel a little bit like we're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again on that. And it's not working. So, unless somebody has some other way to try to improve those relationships, I don't think just continually kind of telling the city what they're screwing up is going to get us there. So I think maybe these kind of actions, direct actions that Steve is talking about might be a better use of our time.
Stop. Who's been silent the whole meeting except for the occasional emoji action.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of this. And I will say that every time I get out in the community and rake leaves or clear gutters or do graffiti, I meet so many people and everyone's so thankful. And it really supports the livability, and people, they just don't know how to get active. So and I think it becomes contagious when we clear snow for the businesses that don't have shovels and we just show up, then it becomes contagious and other people are like, oh yeah, I can do that. That's easy. I'll get out here too. So I think just showing up is something we can do to make the city better.
Steve, any final thoughts?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I just say here to Krista. Yeah, absolutely. Just get active. Do.
Let's circle back. Do you want to do the approved meeting minutes from last meeting?
So move.
Second. Any objection? Meeting minutes are passed. And public comment. Any public comment? Alan, do you have anything to offer the group?
Oh, no, nothing to say.
Anything else before we take off? Exactly
Have a
on time. Look at that.
Have a great holiday.
Yeah.
Save some
Merry
for
Christmas.
next
Happy
year.
Hanukkah. Happy New Year.
Yo, Saturnalia.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Great meeting.
Be well, everybody.
Bye-bye.